5 minutes ago, another
solar
whisper
system
arrived.
carrying a secret
Not
almost
from
beyond
Mars,
sea.
not from the moon.
We were told it might be small,
from the dark beyond
just
our
a
sun.
dark lump of ice.
A machine older
cloud.
than the internet just
But the
spoke
more
again.
powerful the observations
And what it is
became,
finding out there
the
is
stranger
not
the story
small.
got.
It is not
And some of the
routine.
most important
It may
clues
change
did
how we
not
think
appear
about
in
the
first
shield
headlines
around
at
our
all.
world.
The
By the end
strangest
of this
part is
video,
this.
you will understand why
That
the machine was
3i
never
Atlas
supposed to
may be
live this
far
long.
larger, far
Stay
older,
with this,
and far more
because
important
the
than
final
people
piece
first
of the
believed.
story is the part
And
almost
why even
nobody's
now
talking
scientists
about.
are still arguing
Right now,
over what this visitor
Voyager
is
1 is
really
moving
telling
through
us.
a region no
The reason
human
this
being will
story
see up
hit so
close for
hard
a
is
very
simple.
long time.
Interstellar
It is not
objects
orbiting
almost
Earth.
never stop
It is
by.
not circling
We
some
only
nearby
confirmed
planet.
3.
It is not even
The
in the
first was
familiar
Oumuamua,
zone
where
where
the
the
sun
sun
clearly
clearly
rules
rules
everything
everything
around
around
it.
it. So strange it sparked
Voyager
years of
1
debate.
is in interstellar space.
The second was Borisov in
beyond the
2019,
heliopause,
beyond the
much more
great comet
comet-like and
inflated by the
easier to
solar
understand.
wind.
If that
Then
sounds
came
abstract,
3i
make it
Atlas,
simple.
first reported on July
Imagine
1st,
the sun blowing
2025,
outward in all
by the
directions all the
NASA-funded
time,
Atlas
like an endless
survey
storm
telescope
of
in
charged
Chile.
particles.
It was not looping
That
around the
storm
sun the
creates
way
a
normal
giant
comets
protective
do.
bubble around the
It
planets.
was cutting through our
Earth
neighborhood on a
lives
path
inside
that
that
said it
bubble.
came from somewhere
Jupiter lives
else,
inside it,
not from the
Saturn,
outer edge of our
Neptune,
own
and
system,
Pluto
not from the
inside
Kuiper
it.
belt,
Not
Voyager
from the
1
Oort
does
cloud.
not.
It
From
crossed
another
the
star
edge of that
system
bubble in
entirely.
August of
That
2012
alone would have
and
made it a
became the
major
first
event.
human-made object
But from the
ever
start,
to enter the
this
space
object
between the
refused to stay
stars.
simple. That
It
sentence
was
should
already
feel bigger
active
than
while
it
still
usually
far
does.
from the sun.
We say it so
Casually
casually
now
now
that it
coma
almost sounds
which is
normal.
the cloud of
It
gas
is
and
not
dust
normal.
around a
It
comet.
is one of the strangest
Even when
facts in
sunlight
the
at that
history of
distance should have
science.
been too
The
weak
machine
to wake
launched
up
in
the kinds of devices we
1977
usually
with
see in our
electronics
own
that
comets.
looked ancient by modern
That raised the
standards.
first
It's
real
still
question
talking to us from outside the
What
sun's
kind of ice was
protective
buried
shell.
in this thing if it could
It
still
still
send
sends back
back
so
data
far
after nearly half a
The second
century?
question came
It
right
still
behind
teaches
it.
us about
If the
place
chemistry
that every
was
telescope
unusual
on
was
Earth
the
can
body
only study
itself
from
unusual
far away.
too.
Out
Then
there,
the third question,
there are no astronauts.
the one that turned
no
this
repair
into a
crews,
real mystery,
no
was the
follow-up
hardest
craft
of all.
nearby.
How
There's
big
just a
was the
single
solid
probe
nucleus hidden
with
inside
signal.
that globe?
And a team on
That
Earth
sounds like
trying
it
to
is
listen
listening
to
before
measure
the
the
silence
silence
finally comes.
When you look at an active
comet,
comet, the story
you're
feels
often
even
not
less
seeing the
believable.
core clearly
Voyager
at all.
1 did not
You're
launch
seeing the
as some
dust
grand
and
forever
gas
mission
around
that everyone
bright
expected to become
sunlight,
legendary,
smeared across
It
the
launched
image
on
like
September
breath
5th,
on glass.
1977,
Riding
comet
a
Titan
lights up the
rocket
space
from
around
Florida
itself so
was a clear
strongly
first
that
assignment.
the thing you
Visit
most
Jupiter.
want to measure
Visit
can become
Saturn.
the hardest thing
Use
to
the rare
isolate.
alignment of the outer planets.
Early in
to
the story,
slingshot outward.
astronomers could only
Gather
say
close
that
data.
the 3i
Take
Atlas
pictures.
was
Send
somewhere
them
inside
home.
a very wide range.
After that,
if the
NASA said
spacecraft
that
survived
as
a
of
little
late
longer,
August
great.
2025,
If not,
the upper
that
limit
would
on
still
its
count as
diameter was
success.
about 5.6
The mission was never built
kilometers.
around the idea that
But
one day
because
this
the
machine
small
would
is
be
about
measuring the
440
interstellar medium
meters.
itself from the
Think about
inside.
how huge
while
that half the
uncertainty
people
is.
who first worked on it
That is the
were
difference
already gone
between
from
a
the
modest
project.
object
And
and
yet
a
that is
giant.
exactly what happened.
Between something that feels
Voyager
familiar
1
and something
flew past
that
Jupiter in
changes the whole
1979 and
category.
changed textbooks.
And this is where the title of
Found
the
a faint
story
ring
starts
around
to
the
matter.
giant planet and discovered two
The public
moons,
heard one
Phoebe
set of
and
impressions, while the
Then it
science
raced on to
kept moving
Saturn in
underneath.
1980, and
Many
did it
people
again,
came
spotting
away
new
thinking
moons and a new
3i
ring, while
Atlas was
revealing
probably
Titan
on the
as a
small
world
side,
hidden under a thick
faint
atmosphere.
interstellar comet. After that, instead of
Interesting,
aiming
yes,
for Uranus
but
or
not a
Neptune,
monster.
Voyager 1
Then,
took a path
better
that
modeling,
carried it above
sharper
the plane of
analysis,
the planets,
and later papers
outward
began
into deep.
pushing the estimate
The
upward.
cameras were eventually shut
One
off.
key study
The photo
found
mission
an
was over.
effective nucleus
The spacecraft
radius
would
of
take
about
no more grand
1.3
portraits,
kilometers,
but the journey
which means the
itself was only
diameter
starting
of
to
roughly
become historic.
2.6
If
kilometers.
you ever want proof
that
that
human
humans
plans are
lied to you
tiny
first.
compared with what reality
But
can
mass
turn
does
into,
not grow in a straight
Voyager
line when
1
size grows.
is that proof.
It grows with volume.
Engineers expected
Body
a
a
few
few
years
times wider can
Instead,
be
they got
tens of
decades.
times more massive.
Scientists expected
So a
data from
comet
the
that
outer
looked
planets.
minor in the first
Instead, they got
telling
the first direct
suddenly
measurements of the
started to look
boundary
like the
between the
heavyweight
solar
of all
system and
confirmed
interstellar
interstellar
space.
visitors.
The public
But that was
expected
only
a famous
one
mission
layer
from
of
the
the
late
shocker.
70s. The
What
James
we
Webb
actually
Space
ended up with
Telescope
was
was
something
not
much
just staring
stranger.
at this object
Some
for
pretty
object from
pictures.
another era.
Webb
Slowly
was
became
tearing its light
humanity's
apart,
only
splitting it
working
into a
scientific
chemical
outpost
outpost
beyond the
That
heliosphere.
is where the story
And
became much
here
more
is
than
why
a
that
size
matters
correction.
to you.
Even if you never think about plasma,
On August 6,
magnetic
2025,
fields, or the shape of the
Webb
solar
used
system,
its near-infrared
the heliosphere
spectrograph to
is
study
not
the
just a
gas
neat
around
scientific
3i
idea.
Atlas while
It is
the
a kind
comet
of
was
shield.
inbound.
It helps
Still on
block
its way
part
toward
of
the
the
sun.
sun assault of cosmic
Scientists
radiation coming
expected
from
some
the
level of
galaxy water,
beyond. Because in our
does
own
not
solar
stop
system,
everything,
water
but it
ice is
matters.
often a main
It is
player
one
in
reason the
common
environment
activity.
around Earth is
Instead,
not even
Webb
harsher than
found
it already
that the
is.
gas coma was
So
dominated
if the
by
outer
carbon
boundary of that
dioxide.
shield is more
Water
violent,
was there,
more
but
complicated,
only in
more
much smaller
porous
amounts
than we believed,
That alone
that
made
is not
3i
just
Atlas
trivia
stand
from the
out.
edge of space.
Carbon
That
dioxide
changes the way we think
rich
about the
comets
neighborhood
do
that
exist,
protects
but
life.
this
here
ratio
at
was
home.
strange enough to say
Before
very
Voyager 1
clearly,
arrived there,
this object
scientists
did not
had
form
models.
in a place much
Good
like
ones.
home. Serious
Now step
ones,
back and
not
think
random
about what you were
guesses.
really hearing.
They had decades of
A
theory,
rare object from
indirect
another star
measurements,
system
simulations
arrives.
describing
Its true
what the
solid
heliopause
size
is
and
hidden by
interstellar
its own
space
glowing
should be
cloud.
like.
Its
The
chemistry
picture
does not
seemed
match
reasonable.
the normal recipe we know
As the
best.
solar wind
And the
spread
more we
farther
learn,
from the sun,
the more the early
it should
public
weaken.
picture starts to look
At some
incomplete.
point, it should slow
That is why
dramatically
the
if
story spread
termination
so
shock.
fast through
Then
astronomy.
it should enter the heliosheath,
It was not just another
the outer
comet.
layer where the
It was
sun's
evidence.
influence still
A
matters.
frozen
but
sample
starts
from
to
somewhere
struggle
else in the
against
galaxy.
the pressure beyond.
Material made in a
Finally,
place we
at
have
the
never
heliopause,
visited and will
the
never
solar wind
identify
should
with
give way
certainty.
to the interstellar medium,
Piece of another
the thin
planetary
gas and
system
magnetic
that
field
just
that
happened to
exists
drift
between
through
stars.
ours.
And
Beyond
because the
that
chance was so
boundary, the
rare,
expectation was
nearly
simple
every
enough.
eye that could turn toward
Interstellar
it did.
space would be thin,
NASA
cold,
and ESA
quiet,
pulled
and mostly
observations
smooth.
from Hubble.
Voyager
Webb,
1 reached that
Swift,
frontier
Spherex,
and
and
immediately
other
started
started
making
making the story messier.
Even spacecraft
First
around
sign was not a
Mars and
dramatic
farther
photograph
out joined the effort.
because there were no cameras
Perseverance
operating
on
anymore.
Mars
Orbiters like
particles.
MAVEN and MRO.
For years,
Clipper,
scientists
Lucy,
knew they were watching
Psyche,
something important
Parker
because
Solar
the
Probe,
populations of
SOHO,
particles around the
and more
spacecraft
all
were changing.
helped build pieces
Particles
of
from the sun dropped sharply.
one of the
Cosmic
most amazing
rays from
parts of the story.
outside the heliosphere
Humanity
rose.
did not send a mission
That looked
to
like a
3i
crossing.
Atlas.
It looked
We
like
had
the
no time
probe
for
had
that.
stepped into a new domain.
Instead, we used a
But there was a
whole
problem.
scattered fleet of
One key
existing
instrument
machines
that could have made
built
the
for
answer
many
others
others
that failed years
and for a short
earlier.
moment turned
So
them
the team
together toward
could
one
not
visitor
instantly declare
crossing the
victory.
dark. They
This
had
is
evidence,
also where the
but not
deeper
all the
emotion
evidence
of the
they
story
wanted.
creeps in.
That uncertainty matters.
You are looking at an object
because
that
it
was
shows
not
how
made
science
for us.
really works.
It did not come here
The
to be
clean
studied.
version of space
It did not
history
slow down
says
for our
Voyager
questions.
1 reached
It was
interstellar
moving through
space
the
and
solar
everyone
system
cheered
on a
on the
one-way
same day.
path that the sun
The
cannot
real version
travel.
was slower. While scientists
The
argued
team
over
had
numbers
strong
and
clues
clues
in
and telescope
2012,
time,
but it took more time to
3i
confirm what
Atlas
had
just
happened.
kept going.
Later,
That speed
the plasma
matters
wave
too.
instrument detected
Early reports
oscillations
put
in
it
the
at
surrounding
nearly
plasma.
250,000
After a solar disturbance
kilometers
moved
per hour
outward and
relative
shook
to
the
the
medium
sun.
around the
Even
spacecraft.
that is hard to feel.
Those
until you
readings
picture
revealed
what
that
it
Voyager
means.
1 was in a
In
denser
1 hour,
plasma
it could
environment
cross a
than the one
distance
inside
many
the
times the
heliosphere.
width of Earth.
That was the missing
In
piece.
one day, it could travel
It meant the
millions of
spacecraft really
kilometers.
had crossed into
We had a
interstellar
narrow
space.
viewing window,
But
and then it
even
would be
then,
gone. The boundary
So,
did not
when later
behave
work
the way
started
many
showing
people
that the
expected.
nucleus was likely much
Scientists
closer to the
thought the
high end
magnetic
than the
field
low
direction
end,
might
the
swing
emotional tone
dramatically
changed.
once Voyager 1
This was not a
stepped
small
outside the
shard with a
heliosphere.
flashy coma.
Instead,
It was a large
the magnetic
interstellar
field
comet,
beyond the boundary
perhaps
turned out
roughly
to be
2.6
surprisingly
kilometers
aligned
across,
with the field just
and
inside it.
possibly the largest
That
confirmed
detail mattered
interstellar
a lot.
object we have ever
It was one
measured.
reason the crossing was so
Borisov, the
confusing.
second
At
interstellar
first.
visitor,
The boundary
was
was not
estimated
acting
at
like
under
a
a
crisp
crisp
line
line
painted across the sky.
Oumuamua
It was
even
acting like
smaller
something
in effective
subtler,
size,
stranger,
though its shape
more
remains
connected.
unusual and still debated.
And then came the hum.
3i Atlas
This is where the
really
story
about 2.6
stops sounding like a
kilometers
routine
wide,
mission update.
and this is
and
not
starts
just
sounding
visitor
like the
number
universe
3,
leaning
it is
closer.
visitor number 3,
Years
arriving
after
with
Voyager
more
1
bulk,
entered
more
interstellar
material,
space,
and more history
researchers
than
studying
anything
data
like it
from
we
its
had yet
plasma
seen.
wave instrument.
And history is the right
something
word,
faint, because
but
size
persistent.
was only the first layer
Not a
of
single
surprise.
burst,
Not a
the
short-lived
second layer
disturbance
may be the
from one
most
solar
mind-bending
event.
of all.
A narrow, steady
Webb later
emission.
found
a
quiet
clues that
signal.
3i Atlas
kind of
could be
continuous
much
background
older than
in
our solar
plasma
system
around the
Not a little
spacecraft.
older. Not
Possibly
possibly in the way
10
your
to
ears
12
would hear it,
billion
of
years
course,
old.
but a physical
Let that
oscillation
settle in.
in charged particles.
Our sun formed about
A real
4.5
structure
billion
in the
years
medium
ago.
itself.
Earth formed
Something
after that.
ongoing.
The oceans
A Cornell-led
formed after
study
that.
described it
As
as
a
a persistent
persistent hum
hum
of
every
interstellar
mountain,
plasma.
every forest,
That wording
every
caught
city,
attention for a
every
reason.
human story.
For
All
decades
decades
after the
scientists
ice.
had mostly measured
This
the
object
density
may
of
already have
plasma
existed
out there.
using big
This
temporary
comet could be a
disturbances.
preserved fragment.
Usually
with
when
time
violent
the
eruptions
galaxy
from the
was
sun
making stars
sent
shockwaves
much
outward
faster
and
than it
stirred the
does
medium.
now.
A time
Those events were
astronomers
useful,
sometimes
but
call
they were
cosmic
like
new.
checking the ocean.
That phrase
only when a
sounds
storm
poetic,
hits the
but the
shore.
science behind it
What Voyager
was real.
1 started providing
In
instead
a paper
was
published in
closer to a running
2026,
report.
web data
Here
showed
is the
exceptionally
density
high
now.
levels of
Here's the
deuterium in the
density a
water.
little later.
Here
Here
is
is how
how
it
it changes.
changes.
Deuterium is a
spacecraft
heavier
keeps
form of
moving.
hydrogen. For the
You
first
can think
time,
of it as
humanity
heavy
was not
hydrogen.
just catching rare
In this
flashes
comet,
from
the
interstellar
deuterium
space.
level was about
It was
30
listening to a
times higher
faint,
than what
ongoing
scientists
background.
usually see in
Sit
comets
with
from
that
our
for a
own
second.
solar system.
A probe
That tells
launched
researchers
when
disco
something
was new
new
is now giving us the first
The ice formed in a very
continuous
cold
in-place
environment
measurements of
and
plasma
stayed
density
cold.
between the
Not
stars.
mildly cold,
And it gets better,
deeply
or
cold.
stranger.
The old picture of interstellar space, heavy water signatures,
instead
nearly
of
uniform
erasing them
voids
through
started to
later
crack.
heating and mixing.
The data suggested
Webb
that
also
the
found that
interstellar
the carbon
medium
isotopes
structure
looked ancient.
texture,
Variation.
much less carbon-13.
It is not just a
compared
blank
with
blab of
carbon
nothing
12
between
that
one star and
scientists
the next.
expect in
It has
younger
changes
systems.
in density
Over time,
as magnetic
the galaxy
influences.
becomes enriched with
It has
heavier
behavior more
isotopes.
like weather
As
than
generations
silence.
of stars are born,
Not weather you
alive
can
and
feel
die.
on your skin, but
So when
weather
you see chemistry
in the
that
language
looks
of plasma
poor
and
and fields,
carbon-13
the kind of
enriched
weather
in
that can
deuterium,
only be understood
you are
by
not
being
just seeing
inside it.
weird numbers.
That point is easy
You are
to
seeing
miss,
a timeline.
so it is worth slowing
a
down
clue
for.
that points to an origin.
Almost everything we know about
In
the
the
early
wider
galaxy
universe
comes from
cold,
light.
dense
We study
star-forming
stars
region long
because they
before our
shine.
sun ever lit
We
up.
study galaxies
This is the
because they
first
glow,
callback to the
a
Ben
hook,
light,
or
because
emit
now the
radio
secret
waves.
starts to feel
But
real.
Voyager 1 is doing
The
something
object is
different.
not only
It is
possibly
not
bigger
watching
than the
interstellar
public first
space from a
imagined.
safe distance.
It may also be
It is
older
moving
than the
through
very
it.
system
It
it
is
is
sampling
crossing.
it directly.
That is why
That
the story
changes the
felt
kind
hidden
of
in
truth
plain
you can
sight.
get. A
The first
telescope can
headlines
tell
were
you a
about
lot about a
discovery,
storm on
speed,
another world
and classification.
It cannot tell you what it
The
feels
later
like
story
to
was
stand
about inside
age,
it.
chemistry, and
Voyager
scale.
1 is our first
deeper
standing
truth took
instrument
time.
in the storm beyond
And
the
if you
sun.
clicked because the
And
title
before we go
sounded
any
too
further,
dramatic,
ask
this is the
yourself
part
this.
where you realize
If
the
you
real
were the
scientist
scientist
seeing
seeing
those
those
first
first
hints
hints
of
of
a
a
steady plasma.
Now
hung in
imagine
a
the
place
physical
that was
journey of something
supposed to
like
be
this.
mostly quiet.
A comet
Would you
forms
trust
around
it right
another
away?
star.
Or would you
It gets
assume
thrown
the
out
old
maybe
machine
by
had
giant
finally started
planets,
lying?
maybe by gravitational
That
chaos
is the
in a
tension
young
in the story.
planetary system. With Voyager 1,
Then
it drifts
every
through
astonishing
interstellar
result
space for
comes
billions
attached
of
to
years.
another question.
Not millions.
Is the universe
Billions.
more complicated than
Darkness
we thought?
almost all the time.
Or are we
No
being
warm
fooled
passes
by
near
a
a parent
spacecraft old
star.
enough to belong
No
in a
bright
museum?
world hanging nearby.
Scientists did what
Just the
careful
thin radiation
scientists
of the
do.
galaxy.
They tested the
cosmic
signal.
rays. They
The
compared
slow
it with
aging of an
expected
ancient
behavior.
frozen body. They looked at
It
whether
enters
the
our
narrow
solar
band
system by
emission
chance,
stayed present
not
over
because we
long
were
periods.
special, not
They
because
asked
it was
what
aimed,
mechanism could create
but
it.
because the galaxy is
And
huge
one
and
possibility
motion
was a
never
natural
stops.
plasma oscillation
For a few
excited
months,
by the
the
environment
greatest
itself.
telescopes humanity has ever
Another
built
possibility
get to read
involved
its surface and its
quasi-thermal
escaping
noise.
gas.
A subtler
Then it leaves
process
forever.
tied to the motion
If that
of
does not
particles.
make you feel small,
Both
nothing
explanations
will.
were important, but
Both
it
carry
should also make
consequences.
you feel lucky.
And neither
Because
allowed the
for a
easy
species that
conclusion
has
that
only
this
had
was just
modern
meaningless
astronomy
static.
for a blink of time,
The hum was telling
we
us
arrived
something
at
real.
just the right
The
level
only
of
question was
technology
exactly
to catch
what.
it.
This is one of those moments where the universe becomes more impressive,
with years to plan,
the answer is not
but
settled.
well enough to do real
If
science.
Voyager 1 had
well enough
simply
to pull out
confirmed
isotope
every
theory
theory,
that would
well
still
enough
be
to see
useful
carbon
science,
dioxide,
but
water,
it did
and
not.
later methane.
It delivered
well
a
enough
result
to estimate
that forced
the hidden
researchers
bodies
to
inside the
choose
coma,
between
well
competing
enough to
interpretations of the
where in
medium
the galaxy
beyond
this
the
relic might have
heliosphere.
been born.
That
And
is
then
much
came
more
another
interesting.
twist.
It means
After
the probe is
3i
not merely
Atlas
filling
swung
in
around the
blanks
sun
on a
and
map.
started
It
heading
is
back out.
challenging the map
Webb
itself.
looked again.
Then
This time
there's
it
the
used
boundary,
its mid-infrared
the famous
instrument
edge,
in December
the place where the
2025,
sun's bubble
after
meets the
perihelion,
galaxy beyond,
which is the
you may
point
have
of
seen
closest
dramatic
approach to
headlines
the
calling
sun.
it a wall of fire.
What it found had
That
never
phrase is
before been
flashy,
directly
but it can also
detected
mislead.
in an interstellar
The
visitor.
truth is more interesting than the
Methane gas.
headline, not a whisper
Near the
of it.
boundary,
A clear
Voyager data
detection.
showed that
That
plasma
would have been enough
can
to
become
make
extremely
headlines.
hot by temperature.
But the ratio made it
reaching
even
tens
stranger.
of thousands of
The
degrees.
methane compared with water was
But temperature
surprisingly
in
high,
space does
with
not
very few
behave the way your
similar
instincts
examples
from
in our
Earth
solar
would
system.
suggest.
Why is
The
that
region is
strange?
incredibly thin.
Because there's almost no
Methane
matter
is
there
very
involved
volatile.
with anything you would
It turns
call
from
a
ice
flame.
to gas easily.
So no, Voyager 1
If
did
methane
not
ice had
smash
been sitting
into
near
a
the
literal
surface
burning
the
wall
whole
like a
time,
movie scene. You might
what
expect
it
it
did
to start
encounter
escaping earlier
was a region
when the
where
comet
particle
first
energy
woke
and
up.
field
But
interactions
early observations
were far more
did not
intense
show
than
it.
the gentle
The
transition
methane
many
appeared
people
clearly
imagine.
only after the
That
comet
matters
had
because
passed close to the
it
sun.
changes the emotional
That
image of the
suggests
heliopause.
it was buried deeper down.
It is not just a
protected
neat
below a
bubble
surface
edge
layer
where
that
one
blocked the
influence
heat
politely
until the
ends
sun
and another
finally
begins.
warmed the comet enough
It is a
to reach
dynamic
those lower
frontier.
levels.
Pressures
In other
meet
words,
there.
3i
Fields
Atlas
interact there.
may have been carrying
Particle
sealed
populations
material
crash
from deep
into each other
inside
there.
hidden
The
under
sun
a
is
crust
not
built
floating
over
in
peaceful
vast
isolation
stretches of time.
It is
Scientists
negotiating with the
think
galaxy.
galactic
Every second,
cosmic rays may have
across
played
the
a
restless
major role in
boundary
that
that
crust.
is more alive
Cosmic
than our
rays
old
are
mental
high-energy
pictures allowed.
particles moving through
And
space,
that brings us to one of the
often
most
produced by
underrated
violent
shocks in
events
the
like
Voyager
exploding
story.
stars.
The heliosphere
Over
may
billions
not
of
protect
years,
us in the
that
simple way we
radiation
once
can
pictured.
chemically alter
It
the
still
surface
protects
of an
us.
icy body.
Yes.
You can
But
strip
the
away
details
the
of how
easiest
it does
lose
that are
volatiles
tied to
and
forces
leave
that are
behind
more
a tangled
tougher
and
process
active
than the
outer
older
shell.
clean diagrams and
Some
textbooks.
researchers
The
suggested
outer boundary
that
is
3i
shaped by the
Atlas
interstellar
may have
environment
carried such a
pressing
crust
back.
tens of meters
The magnetic
thick.
field outside
If that is
not
right,
just some
then the sun
unrelated
did
distant
more than
background.
warm the comet.
It influences
It may
the
have
shape
broken
of our
open an
solar
ancient
neighborhood.
outer skin
It
and
exposed
exposed how
material
energetic
that
particles
had
enter,
not seen
deflect,
serious heating
or
in
build up near
billions
the
of
edge.
years. Think about
In
the
plain
timing
English,
of that.
our
Our
cosmic
sun may have
shelter has
cracked a vault
seams,
that no other star had
stresses,
opened for
and
ages
interactions
beyond
we're
easy
still
human
learning how to
imagination.
describe.
Not
But
because the
here
sun is
is
special,
where the
but
story
because
takes another
chance
turn.
brought this object
The
close enough to
spacecraft
it.
discovering all this
And we
nearly
happened to be
died
here
before
with
instruments
instruments
ready.
ready.
The methane was not
2023
proof of
Voyager
life.
1
It was
started
not
sending
proof of
back
anything
nonsense.
artificial.
The signal itself
But
was still
it was
arriving at
proof
Earth
that the inside of this
spacecraft had
comet
not gone
still had
silent.
more to
It had
reveal
not
than the
vanished.
outside had
But
let
the
on.
engineering data coming back
That is
made
the
no
pattern
sense.
of this
It
whole
was
story.
scrambled, corrupted. First,
The
team
coma
could
hid
hear
the
the patient
size,
breathing,
but
but
then
the
the
words
surface
had
had
become
become
gibberish.
chemistry.
For a mission that
Each
had
layer
survived
made the
for so
object
many
look
decades,
simpler than it
this
really
was one of
was.
the most
It
dangerous
was better
moments
data
it had ever
peeled it
faced.
back.
The
Around this
concern
point,
to
people started asking the question
you are
terrifying.
probably already
A memory
asking.
chip in the flight data
Could
system
something
had
this
failed.
unusual be
One
more
small
than
piece
a
of
natural
hardware
comet?
worn down after
That
decades
question
in deep
arrived
space
fast
was
because
damaging
every
the
rare
code
interstellar
needed to
object
package and send
now
data
carries
home.
the shadow of
On
Earth.
Oumuamua.
This kind of problem might mean
Once
opening
the
the
world
machine,
had gone through
replacing
one
apart and
huge
restarting
argument over whether an
Out there,
interstellar
none of that
object might be
exists.
artificial.
Voyager
The
1
next
is
one
more than
was
15
always going to be
billion miles
judged
away.
through that lens.
The command sent to it take
Harvard
about 23
astrophysicist
hours to arrive.
Avi Loeb
Then you
again
became
became
one of the
23
loudest
hours for
voices
reply.
raising the
Every test
possibility
cost
that
almost 2
the
days.
strangest
Imagine
feature
trying to
should not be
repair a
dismissed
failing
too
machine
quickly.
with that delay.
In the case
You
of
study the
3i
bad
Atlas,
output,
methane
guess what
became
failed?
one of the talking points.
You write a command,
Was it
you
purely
send it
natural
into the lab,
outgassing, or
then you
could
wait
it
nearly
point
a
to
full
something
day
more
just for the
exotic?
message to
This
reach
is a
the
good place to
probe.
pause and say
Then
something
you wait
important.
again for the probe's
Science gets
response to
stronger when
crawl
people
back
ask hard
across the
questions.
gulls.
But
One
not
wrong
all
move
moves
can
can
cost
cost
an equal
mission.
answers.
One good move can
Mainstream
still take
teams
days
working
to prove
directly
itself.
with the data.
This
The
is not
evidence
repair
still
in
points
any
to a
normal
natural
sense.
object.
It is
Carbon
medicine
dioxide
across
rich
light
chemistry,
hours.
a
The
large
engineering
active
team
coma,
did something close to
post-perihelion
miraculous.
methane release,
Since they could not
extreme
fix the
isotopic
damaged
signatures
signatures,
directly, they began
all of that
moving,
can be explained.
ended
The comet
into
crossed
the dark.
into our solar system.
Then you
carrying
wait
a
nearly a
secret
full
almost no
day
one
just
could
for the
see.
message to reach the
You were
probe.
told it might be small.
Then you wait again for
Maybe
the
just
probe's
a
response
dark lump
to
of
call
ice
back
wrapped in a
across the
fuzzy
gulf.
cloud.
One
The
wrong
more
move
powerful
can
the
cost the mission.
observations became,
One good move can
the
still
stranger
take
the story
days to
got.
prove itself.
And some of the
This
most
is not
important
repair
clues
in
did
any
not
normal
appear in the
sense.
first headlines
It is
at all.
medicine across light hours.
By the end of this video,
the engineering
you
team
will
did something
understand
close
why
to
three
miraculous,
Atlas may be far
and since
larger,
they could not
far
fix the
older,
damaged
and
chip
far
directly,
more important
they
than
began
people
moving
first believed.
connections of code
And why
to
even
other
now
parts of memory.
scientists are still
Not
arguing
one big
over what this
small
visitor is
pieces,
really telling
careful
us.
steps.
The reason the
Rewritten
story
paths,
hits so hard
verified
is
one
simple.
by one.
Interstellar
They were
objects
effectively
almost
performed
never
remote
stopped
brain
by.
surgery on a
We only
spacecraft
confirmed
built in the
three.
early 70s.
The
Using
first was
radio command.
Oumuamua in
Across a
2017,
round-trip delay
the object
of
that
nearly
looked
2
so
days.
strange and
Somehow
sparked
it
years of
worked.
debate. The second
Voyager
was
1 began
Borisov
sending
in
usable
2019,
engineering data
much
again,
more
and
common-like and
scientific
easier
data
to
as well.
understand.
If that does not move
Then
you,
came
space
3i
may never
Atlas,
move you.
first reported on
This is
July
not
1st,
just a science
2025.
story. It is a
by the
human
NASA-funded
story about
Atlas
patience,
survey
about
telescope in
stubbornness,
Chile.
about
It was
people
not
refusing
refusing
to
to
let
let
the
the
oldest
oldest
and most
distant
distant
machine we have
It was
die
cutting through our
quietly
neighborhood
without
on
one
a
more
path
fight.
that said it came
And
from
when
somewhere
Voyager 1
else,
came back, it
not
returned
from the outer edge of
more
our
of the
own
mystery
system,
intact,
not
more
from
of
the
the
Kuiper
hum,
Belt,
more
not
of
from
the
the Oort
interstellar
cloud.
portrait.
From
More
another
proof
star
that the
system
space
between
between
stars is not
that
empty
alone would
in
have
the way
made it a
ordinary
major event.
language suggests.
But from the start,
At this point in
this
the
object
story, it
refused
is
to
fair
stay
to ask a
simple.
deeper question.
It was already active
Why
while
have
still
we been
far
so
from the
ready
sun.
to imagine
It
interstellar
carried a bright
space as
coma,
quiet,
which
in
is the
first
cloud
place?
of gas and dust around
Part of
a
the
comet.
answer is simple.
Even when sunlight
Because compared
at that
with a
distance should
planet,
have been
it is
too
empty.
weak to wake up
Compared
the
with an
kinds of ice we
atmosphere,
usually
it is
see
empty.
in our own comets.
Compared with a star,
That raised the
it
first
is
real
empty.
question.
But empty is a dangerous word buried in this thing if it could start venting so far out and still be active. The second question came right behind it. And still have the chemistry was unusual, was particles drifting in a magnetic field over enormous distances, can build patterns, turned this into a real mystery, regions of changing density. How big was the solid nucleus hidden inside that? When the scale becomes interstellar, that sounds like an easy thing to measure. Vacuum can become a landscape. When you look at an active comet, you are often not seeing the core clearly, and the scale of that should not be lost. The dust and gas around it, brightened by sunlight, smeared across the image like breath on glass. But even at that speed, the distances around itself are so huge that the thing you most want to measure can become the hardest. It takes like nearly a day to cross the gap from the spacecraft to Earth. Early in the story, astronomers could only say the sun behind Voyager is no longer the dominant force shaping what it measures. NASA said that stars ahead, as of late August, still impossibly far. The upper limit on its diameter has exactly one instrument doing this job from this place. But it could be as small as about 440 underpowered and living on borrowed time. Think about how huge that last part is no metaphor. That is the difference between a modest object. Voyager 1 runs on electricity, generated by something that feels familiar and something that changes the whole category at launch. And this is where the title of the story starts to matter. Decades later, it is the public heard one set of NASA says the spacecraft loses about 4 watts of power. Many people came away thinking sound like much until you realize probably a little margin is left. Every single watt matters now. Engineers have already shut down most of the original instruments set over the years. Better modeling, sharper analysis, and later papers shut off the low-energy charged particles instrument on Voyager 1. One key study found an effective nucleus radius of about 1.3 kilometers, which means a diameter of roughly almost half a century of science. Then a command sent from Earth does not hit you at first. After that shutdown, Voyager 1 was left with 2 primary science instruments still operating. One a few times wider waves, can be tens the other measures magnetic fields. So a comet means the very tools at the heart of the current interstellar mystery are still alive, like the heavy barely, not comfortably, interstellar but visitors. Alive. But NASA made that shutdown because the spacecraft's power margin. The James Webb Space Telescope was not just staring at this maneuver earlier in the year. The power level Webb was tearing its light apart. That was staining it into a chemical Voyager has fault protection. That is where the story became much more than a size correction. The spacecraft may shut things down on its own to protect. On August 6th, 2020, kind of autonomous safety Webb used its near-infrared spectrograph to study the gas around 3I Atlas. So the team chose the comet was in spacecraft still on its way toward the sun. This is where the story becomes almost unbearably tense some level of water. Because in our own solar system, result from Voyager water ice is often now depends on a shrinking power budget and a series of hard choices. Webb found that the gas coma was dominated by carbon dioxide. Save a heater. Water was there, cool, but only in much smaller amounts. That alone made the 3I Atlas stand out. Stretched the mission one more year. Carbon dioxide, rich, every decision is a trade. This ratio was strange enough to say very clearly. Still, this object did not form in a place much like home. Engineers have been working on a more ambitious energy-saving procedure. A rare object from another star system arrives. The idea is true solid size is hidden by its own glowing cloud. Nothing that dramatic chemistry does not match. The goal is to rework how power is distributed. The more we learn, the more the early public picture starts to look incomplete systems. That is why this story spread so fast through astronomy. It was not just another comet on a machine. It was evidence, old deep frozen sample from somewhere else in the galaxy. But the reward could be material made. The test hold up never visited more time, and will never identify with certainty. Preserve both remaining instruments of another planetary system. Maybe even enough just happened to drift through ours to reopen possibilities. And because the chance was so rare, nearly every kind of real space drama is why you watch stories like this. NASA and ESA pulled observations from the next big discovery from the edge of the sun's influence and other telescopes. Is probably not going to come from a shiny spacecraft around Mars and farther out. It may come from this fading machine one more time on Mars, from a signal so weak that only the Deep Space Network can pull it out of the noise. Psyche, space does not always hand its biggest revelations to the newest technology. Helped build pieces of the picture. It gives them to the survivor the most amazing parts of the story. Now let's come back to the science. Humanity did not. This is where the emotional core and the physical truth. We had no time for that. The plasma hum matters. Not because it sounds eerie, but because it gives us continuity. Built for many other reasons. It lets us track interstellar plasma density without waiting for a rare solar outburst to ring the medium like a bell. This is also where the deeper Voyager 1 can help reveal gradual structure over time. You are looking at an object that was driving through fog at night with your headlights off. It did not come here to be studied. Every now and then, it did not slow down flashes and shows you a few trees. It was moving through the old way of reading interstellar plasma that the sun. The new hum is more like a dim constant. Scientists argued over numbers and fought for telescope time. Still leaves huge unknowns. 3I Atlas just keeps glowing. It keeps telling us where the density is now. Early reports put it at nearly 250,000. That may sound technical. Let's bring it back to something simple. Even that is hard. You can measure a place continuously. It stops being a 1 hour. It could cross a distance many times the first time. Interstellar space could travel millions of kilometers. Science. We had a narrow viewing window, and then it would be gone. And that creates another layer of tension. When later work started showing that the medium around the much closer to the high end than the low end, not just now, the emotional tone much larger scale. This was not a small shard. What if our solar system moves through regions? It was a large interstellar comet, and perhaps roughly 2.6 kilometers across. And what does that do to the heliosphere interstellar object? What does it do to the flow of cosmic rays inward? The second interstellar visitor is estimated at under a kilometer across. Change more than expected over long intervals, smaller in effective size. The sun drifts though its shape remains unusual and still debated. These are not panic questions. If 3I are honest questions, really about 2.6 Voyager 1 does not answer them all, then this is not just visitor number 3. This is why researchers care so much about arriving with more tiny from the material and more narrow than anything like it. Small density shift. And history is the right word, because size was only the first layer of surprise. The space around us. The second layer may be the most mind-bending of all. Unchanging. Webb later found the clues that 3I Atlas could be much older than our solar system, interacting with not a little older. Voyager 1, 10 to 12 first direct witness to that interaction from beyond the boundary. Our sun formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Shock built into this mission. The ocean does not get enough attention. We often imagine human exploration. Every mountain, bigger, forest, newer, faster machines. Every human story, but the greatest outward reach in our species' history still belongs to objects may already have existed before most modern computing could be a preserved fragment. Voyager 1 has less raw computing power than devices people throw away without thinking. A time astronomers no modern artificial intelligence. Cosmic noon. No sleek autonomous. The phrase sounds poetic, but the science behind advanced fault-tolerant software by current standards. A paper published in 2026. It is doing a job no advanced high levels of deuterium in the water. That says something profound about exploration. Deuterium is a heavier form of hydrogen, is not being smart enough to imagine heavy hydrogen. In this comet, the deuterium level was about 30 times higher than some questions take time as a physical comets from our own solar system. You cannot hurry a probe to interstellar space with something very important. You cannot. The ice formed in a very cold environment and stayed cold. You have to launch. Mildly, you have to maintain. Deeply, you have to survive. The kind of cold that preserves things long after the world has moved on instead of erasing them through later heat. Voyager 1 is a monument to Webb also found that the carbon isotopes looked bolted to that monument is much less carbon-13, a gold-plated copper disk carrying greetings in dozens of languages. Over time, the galaxy becomes enriched with heavier isotopes. Images encoded. Generations of stars are born, live and die. And a map that so when you see chemistry tiny world by using pulsars, carbon-13, people talk about the golden record as a symbol. You are not just seeing weird numbers. But after all these years, it has also become something else to an origin, a strange time capsule galaxy, to the most distant object we have ever built. Star-forming region, long after Voyager 1 sends its last data. This is the first callback to the hook. Think about the time scale starts to feel long after the final radio whisper reaches not only possibly bigger than the mission team archives the last packet. It may also be long after no very machine is listening to Voyager anymore. That is why the story felt still move in plain sight. There's nothing out there thick enough to slow it in any meaningful way. Speed. It will cross dark distances that make the later story about civilization look like a blink scale. The golden record may outlast every building on Earth. And if you may outlast languages as we know them. Too dramatic, it may outlast memory itself. But the real science is the more immediate truth. More dramatic than before it becomes a silent. Now imagine the physical journey of something like this. A comet is why this final chapter matters so much. It gets thrown out. The window is still open, giant planets, but not for long. Maybe by gravitational chaos. The remaining instruments are fragile. Young planetary power will keep declining. Then it drifts through interstellar space for billions of years. More systems will be turned off. Billions. At some point. Darkness almost all the time. Far from now. No warm passes. The final operating science instrument. No bright world hanging nearby to continue. Just the thin radiation of the galaxy. Cosmic rays. The last signal will the slow aging of an ancient frozen body. Nearly a full day crossing. It enters our solar system by chance. People on Earth, not because we were special. They will wait for it was aimed. They will receive it. But because the galaxy is huge and motion never stops. There may be nothing more. For a few months, that future silence telescopes every current Voyager data point to read its surface and its every measurement of plasma density. Then it leaves forever. Reading of the magnetic field. If that does not make you feel small, clean packet after the memory crisis. But it should also make you feel lucky. Additions to a large archive. For a species that has only had modern astronomy for a blink of time, we arrived at just the right level of technology. There's one more unresolved piece here, and it may be the most spacecraft interception of the story. Not with years to plan, researchers still debate the exact physical source of the persistent emission. Well enough to pull out isotope ratios. Is it best described as thermally excited plasma, water, and later methane? Is quasi-thermal noise part of the hidden body inside the coma? The distinction may sound small, but it is not. The right interpretation of and then came another twist. How we model the local interstellar media atlas, how we infer density and temperature, and how we understand the interaction between the heliosphere. This time it used its mid-infrared instrument. In other words, when Voyager 1 eventually goes quiet, it may leave us not point of closest approach to the sun with a sharpened mystery. What it found had never before been directly detected in an interstellar visitor. Love neat endings. Methane gas almost never provides them. Instead, it gives us better questions. That alone would have been enough. Maybe that is what makes Voyager 1. The ratio made it even stranger. This mission keeps doing two things surprisingly high. It keeps solving very few similar examples in creating new system. It proved that the heliosphere has an edge. Because methane is very interstellar space can turn from ice to gas easily. It revealed a steady plasma background sitting near the surface the whole time. You might expect it to start escaping the boundary when the comet survived a failure that might have ended everything. Early observations, at the very same time, it keeps the methane appeared clearly only after the comet had passed. Still do not understand your neighborhood. That suggests as you think buried deeper down. That message is not below a surface layer. It is a reminder of scale until the sun finally warms the comet because it is messy. It is magnificent. In other words, it is. 3I Atlas picture the scene now. Have been carrying sealed material somewhere beyond the far planets, hidden under a crust built over vast stretches of time. Voyager 1 scientists think galactic cosmic rays may have played a major role in that crust. Cosmic rays are high-energy particles moving through space. The spacecraft keeps a careful orientation so its antenna can aim stars. It draws on a diminishing billions of years. That radiation can chemically alter the surface of an icy body. Continues. It can strip away the easiest readings volatile plasma wave signature behind a tougher packet-assessed outer shell. Some researchers a day later on suggested that 3I Atlas may have carried such a crust tens of meters. That is exploration at its purest. If that is right, then the sun did more than warm the endurance. It may have people ask what Voyager 1 found, the best answer may not be one had not seen serious heating in billions found that the edge of our solar neighborhood is the timing of that, not simple. Our sun may have found that interstellar plasma is not just occasional data from rare shocks, but something that can be tracked not because the sun is special, because chance found that the magnetic story at the boundary is more subtle than old expectations suggested. The methane was not proof of life; it was not part of a living interaction with the galaxy. But, and perhaps most powerfully, the inside of this comet still had stars was not on the outside has led on important places. And that is the pattern. It is a place story, a real place. The coma hid the density, motion, then the structure, and mysteries of its own. Each layer made the object night sky changes. It really was. The black between the stars no longer looks blank. Around this point, it looks like started asking the question you are probably already asking: pressure, could something this unusual be more than a natural comet? It looks less like nothing. That question arrived fast because every rare interstellar object Voyager 1 now carries the shadow of. If you have made it this far, then here is the question that matters most. One huge. Or would you want the last active messenger beyond the sun to keep measuring until the very end? The next one was always going to be judged through that plasma waves. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, the truth again became one of the loudest voices raising the possibility that we have one strangest feature should not be dismissed too quickly. Time is closing around it. In the case of